So today, we're diving into a story that honestly feels like it's been ripped straight out of a horror movie. But according to the source, it's a terrifyingly true account. It's about a student who was just looking for a better future, and instead, he walked straight into an unexplained nightmare. Let's get into what happens when an offer that seems way too good to be true turns out to be a trap. And this quote, wow, it just hits you, right? It perfectly captures the heart of this entire story. It's such a chilling reminder that sometimes the paths that look the most promising can lead to the absolute darkest places. We're about to see how a simple search for a part-time job spiraled into this insane mystery of abduction, trauma, and ultimately death. Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story starts with two friends, Hamza and Ayub. They're young Moroccan students, and they're in a new country that feels cold and unwelcoming. And like so many students studying abroad, they were pretty isolated and, frankly, struggling. The cost of living was insane, and they desperately needed to make some money, to support their studies and take some of the pressure off their families back home.
And then Ayub finds what looks like the perfect answer, a job ad, just tacked to a utility pole. Now, as you can see, there were some immediate red flags, right? A remote coffee shop, night shifts only. But for two students who were desperate, one detail just completely overshadowed everything else: the salary. It was incredibly high for a student job, and they wanted them to start right away, no real questions asked.
And right away, the promise and the reality just do not line up. The owner was super friendly, almost too friendly, which was pretty unusual in that country. But the place itself, it's out in the middle of nowhere, and it just felt wrong. And the most unsettling part? The women working in the kitchen. They kept whispering, looking over at Hamza and Ayub with pure fear in their eyes. It was like they were desperate to warn them about something, but were too terrified to actually speak.
Hamza just could not shake this awful feeling, so he called his mom, and her reaction was instant and absolute. She begged him to stay away from that place, and he listened. He trusted that powerful gut feeling, that mother's intuition, over the promise of easy cash, and he turned the job down. But Ayub, he was more desperate, maybe a little less superstitious, and he decided to take it. He was going to go alone.
And right here, this is where the story takes a seriously dark turn. With Hamza safe at home, Ayub walks into that mysterious coffee shop for his very first night shift. He has absolutely no idea that he's starting this terrifying 10-day descent, one that he will never, ever recover from.
This timeline is it's shocking how fast everything completely fell apart. So after two shifts that seemed pretty normal, Ayub just vanishes. He doesn't come home on the morning of day 3. When he finally shows up a day later, he's a ghost of his former self. He's broken, terrified, and can barely string a sentence together. Just a few days later, he tries to take his own life. And by day 10, only about a week after he started that job, he was found dead.
Before he died, Ayub managed to tell Hamza this just absolutely wild, fragmented story. He said he was taking out the trash and feeding some stray cats when this dark figure just attacked him. He woke up in some damp underground place, completely paralyzed, with this weird buzzing in his ears. The figure blew some kind of powder in his face, and the next thing he remembers, he's back at the coffee shop and there's a needle mark on his arm.
And the official autopsy? Well, it didn't give them any real answers. In fact, it only led to more questions. The cause of death was listed as an unknown toxic substance. Whatever they had injected him with had caused horrible hallucinations and paranoia. But the police couldn't identify it. They couldn't trace its source. Ayub's death was officially a mystery, leaving his family and Hamza with nothing but these horrifying, unanswered questions.
But for Hamza, a mystery just wasn't good enough. He was consumed by grief, by guilt. He couldn't let it go. He felt like he owed it to his friend to find out what really happened to him. So he made a pretty fateful decision. He was going to go back to the place where it all started, that coffee shop. So Hamza goes and confronts the owner. And at first, the guy just plays dumb. But then he slips up. He makes this one tiny, critical mistake. While they're talking about that night, the owner casually mentions Ayub feeding the cats. And Hamza just freezes. That detail about the cats? Ayub had only told him. There is no way the owner could have possibly known that, unless he was there. And in that one moment, Hamza knew. He was looking at his friend's killer. In that split second of horrifying realization, as Hamza is processing that the man right in front of him was involved, bam! Everything goes black. He's struck from behind and he loses consciousness.
He had walked right back into the very same trap. When Hamza finally comes to, he's in a living nightmare. He's in a dungeon, a cold stone cell that just reeks of decay. And he's not alone. There are other prisoners, and they're all foreigners, just like him, being watched over by these silent guards in black. The other captives, they were in a horrific state, drugged, behaving erratically, almost as if they weren't even human anymore.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, just as Hamza is losing all hope, convinced this is the end, chaos. The sound of gunfire just erupts through the prison. The cell doors are being busted open one by one. A violent raid is happening. And for a second, it actually seems like salvation.
In the middle of all this violence, one of the armed men singles out Hamza. He grabs him, looks him right in the eye, and says, "Don't be afraid. I will protect you." And in that moment, exhausted and just completely terrified, Hamza believes him. He thinks he's finally being rescued from hell.
But that feeling of relief, it lasts for maybe a second. Because as they're speeding away in a car, one of the other men laughs and says this to Hamza's supposed savior, a new toy. Hamza realizes he wasn't rescued at all. He was just handed over from one monster to another.
What happens next is it's this incredibly twisted form of cruelty. His new captor takes him to a totally normal-looking apartment and acts with this unbelievable kindness. He's offering him food, medicine, even a phone to call his family. But it's all an act. After giving him a drink that knocks him out, Hamza wakes up tied to a bed, and his rescuer then tortures him with a razor.
And then, just when you think you've seen the absolute worst of it, he does the most bizarre, baffling thing yet. After the torture is over, the man just calmly cleans and bandages Hamza's wounds, unties him, and says, "You can go now." He walks him to the door and just lets him leave. Hamza stumbles out onto the street, broken and bleeding, with absolutely no way to comprehend what just happened.
He eventually collapses in front of some police officers. And you'd think, okay, now we'll get some answers. An official investigation finally begins. But instead of finding answers, the whole thing just uncovers more questions, and it all leads to a complete and total dead end.
I mean, just look at this. The official investigation was beyond frustrating. Every single lead just poof, it hits a brick wall. The coffee shop owner had an alibi. The secret prison, Hamza's memory was so fragmented, he couldn't locate it. The apartment and his torturer were like ghosts. Every piece of evidence just disappeared. And in this final, bizarre twist, the police actually suggested that his torturer might have helped him by cutting something out of him. It's an explanation that makes zero sense.
So after all of that, after everything these two friends went through, what's the most important number in this entire story? It's this one, 0. That's the number of people who were ever arrested, the number of suspects ever charged, the number of official answers Hamza ever got for what they did to him and his friend.
In the end, Hamza did make it back home to Morocco. And yeah, his physical wounds healed, but the psychological scars, those are there forever. He's left completely haunted by the memory of a nightmare that, according to the official record, never even really happened.
And that leaves us right here with this one massive, unsettling question. What really happened in that so-called Devil's Land? Were these students just disposable victims for some organ trafficking ring? Were they unwilling subjects in some grotesque, illegal experiment? Or was it something even more sinister? We may never know. The truth, it seems, was buried along